What's going on? That's Textbook Sports Squad. Right now, you're listening to the That's Textbook Sports podcast. And if you haven't already, follow me on YouTube. Subscribe to my YouTube channel, I should say. Follow me on social media. All the links to my social media, I'm talking about my TikTok, my YouTube channel, Spotify, Twitter, formerly or now known as X, formerly known as Twitter. All the links to my social media will be in my description. Make sure you click the links, follow, hit subscribe, like this video. Of course, be a friend, tell a friend, share this podcast out with others. And today we're going to be talking about a little bit about the World Series. College football is coming up. Got NFL football. I'll be giving some of my NFL Week 9 predictions and game day picks. But as for right now, let's just get into this episode. Of course, as you all know, that's Textbook. So to talk about the NFL and what happened yesterday, Tennessee Titans and Will Levis. Will Levis is their starting quarterback now. He's looking to be the quarterback of the future. Obviously, as a rookie, things are going to progress slowly, but he's looked good so far. I was going to say he's looked great so far. He did have that lone interception, though. That last drive, you felt like eventually at some point in time with the risky throws he was throwing throughout that whole entire drive, he was going to throw an interception. It sealed the deal. But how did he look so far, or how has he looked so far? We all know in his lone start, he threw 3 touchdown passes, had a phenomenal debut as a rookie. What has he done that's made him look so good? Well, he's got phenomenal touch with the football, great, actually sometimes too great of poise in the pocket. Tennessee Titans offensive line, they've been struggling all year with protection issues, breakdowns, not being able to diagnose the stunts as quickly as they should. So he stood in the pocket, even with all those protection issues, delivered some throws. Like I said, nice touch. The throws he's really comfortable making on the seam to a slot wide receiver or to a tight end. And then the crossing and over routes. Since he has such great touch, he's able to use that on those crossing and over routes. So he's looked good so far, and you'd like to see an offensive coordinator building a system around him, working with what he does well, trying to fix up or shade away some of his issues, weaknesses. You love to see that. Love to see how it progresses, especially after the mini bye. Then for the Pittsburgh Steelers, Matt Canada, the offensive coordinator, moves from the booth to on the field, and it looked a lot better. Now, a lot of offensive coordinators and coordinators in general, they like to be in the booth because they can see how the safeties, the cornerbacks are rotating, what the linebackers are doing, if they're splitting one half of the field into zone and the other half into man. That's why a lot of coordinators like to be up in the box. Now, some like to be on the field because they get a feel and a flow for the offense. You can tell they had a little bit better flow. There were still a lot of questionable things that went on in that game, especially offensive play calling. You have George Pickens, Deontay Johnson, although he does have his drops moments. You still have that offensive line. Yeah, you fixed it up. You got Isaac Seumalo from free agency from the Philadelphia Eagles. You drafted Broderick Jones to be your tackle. Still a little bit more protection issues. Have to fix that up. See also how they progress into the mini bye. Not a whole lot to take out of it. I mean, we know the Pittsburgh Steelers defense continually. They're going to have phenomenal defenses year in, year out. TJ Watt, Defensive Player of the Year. They were also missing Minka Fitzpatrick. You know that had to play a factor, but still, even at that, solid enough defense. They got the win. Mike Tomlin and his team, I believe right now they're at a 5-3 record. And they statistically have had one of the worst offenses in the league, or bottom-tier offense in the league. But of course, their defense, playing phenomenal. How in the earth, considering this roster, and it feels like with every roster Mike Tomlin has, when you look at them on paper before the season starts, you project this team to finish with only 4 or 5 wins. But somehow, someway, Mike Tomlin has been playing great football. Of course, he hasn't had a losing record. Every year he's been a head coach, they've had a 500 record. For those who are calling him out and say if they don't get things going and if Kenny Pickett doesn't get things going, that Tomlin should lose his job, that's absolutely absurd. If anyone is even thinking that, again, not a whole lot to take out of it. Only a couple things. Now we'll see how we head into. It's a disappointing mark in football. After this week, which is week 9, we'll be halfway done with football. That's disappointing. But the good thing is we have 9 more weeks to be playoff caliber football. We're going to see it in some of these matchups this week. You got the Kansas City Chiefs, Miami Dolphins, Baltimore Ravens versus the Seattle Seahawks, and then last Sunday night primetime game, Cincinnati Bengals, Buffalo Bills, a rematch from last year's playoffs. As I mentioned, disappointing. We're going to be halfway done, but hang in there. The best football is ahead of us. Now, I'll talk a little bit about the World Series. Texas Rangers, congratulations to them. Also want to give a mini congratulations to the Arizona Diamondbacks. They should not be holding their heads low. They should not be down on themselves. Yeah, I get it. It's disappointing to lose into the World Series. You get so far, and yet your dreams, goals still aren't accomplished. But they've got a lot to look forward on. A lot of rookies that contributed on that roster. And they had one of the lowest payrolls in MLB. You still make it to the playoffs. You make it to the World Series. You win a game. I mean, it was in 5 games. It finished in 5 games. So really, you look at it from that perspective, it wasn't much of a contest. But they still fought, and this was a team that fought through all adversity. It's just that you faced a Texas Rangers team that faced even more adversity. I mean, Road Warriors, 11-0 in the postseason, first ever team in MLB history in the postseason to go undefeated in away games. And then you had your manager, Bauchi. I might have butchered his name. Excuse me, forgive me for that. I believe his 3rd World Series with 4 different teams. I mean, I forget the stat, but I know all it basically says is he's won World Series with different ball clubs. Congratulations to him. Congratulations to them. Corey Seager, we're getting to talk about him being in the category, in the same sphere, similar comparison to Mr. October. Like I said, Rangers road team. And it was interesting that the teams they played, you look at it, the Rays, the Orioles. Orioles had the 2nd best record in baseball. Astros, defending champs. You're down. Haven't won a home game in that series. You're down 3-2. Gotta win 2 games in Houston against the defending champs. You beat them. Diamondbacks, you win the World Series in 5 games. A tough game 1, which if it went either way, the series would. I mean, I'm recording this November 3rd. I forget the schedule, but you at least force a game 6. If you don't win that game 1, it's a walk-off. Adolis Garcia. You even did it without Adolis Garcia for a couple of games as well. Rays, Orioles, Astros, Diamondbacks. Take the first letter of all those ball clubs' names. You have Road. That's what they were. Road Warriors. Now, on to basketball, NBA. Of course, November 3rd. So, by the time this podcast is being out, the in-season tournament will have started. They got some really cool designs for the courts, really interesting. I mean, it's reminding me and reminiscent of when the NBA Finals really cared about what the on-court design looked like. They'd have the Finals print or the Finals italics on the court, and then they'd have the miniature trophy somewhere on the court too. Really interesting to see those. And at first I thought, this in-season tournament sounds ridiculous, but actually it's going to be kind of fun in my opinion because you're getting somewhat playoff caliber basketball, a lot of primetime games televised on big networks. So you get somewhat playoff caliber basketball. It'll be entertaining to watch. I mean, they say all these count towards the regular season and the points and the statistics, and it's a tournament, so you get that level of competition of winning, even though it's not the NBA Finals, but you see bragging rights and that possibility. So, hated it at first, kind of growing on me now. I want y'all to let me know what y'all think. Are you going to be watching the in-season tournament? Is this a thumbs up or is this a thumbs down? Let me know in the comment section. I appreciate y'all. But before you head off into the comment section, check out the description because that's where all my social media are. TikTok, YouTube, Spotify, Twitter, now known as X. I hope we can stop saying that. Just keep it Twitter. Follow me there. Go into the description, click all those profiles, follow me there. You don't want to miss any of the content I have coming up. And of course, subscribe, like this video, be a friend, tell a friend, share this podcast out to others. Now for the NFL, if you were to ask me who is the best team in the NFL right now, it's a really strange year. It almost feels like a down year in the NFL because there's not really one team or a collection of teams that are really showing themselves to be a tier above everyone else. Like the Philadelphia Eagles only have one loss on the season. I think they're the only team with one loss at all. But it still doesn't feel like the same Philadelphia Eagles from last year. It feels like a team that's just kind of barely getting it out, kind of barely grinding it out, grinding out a lot of close wins. But then you look statistically and you compare this squad from last year's squad, they're almost kind of identical as well. So maybe we just had too much high expectations for this team. But if you were to ask me who's the best team in the NFL right now, I'm going to go with the Philadelphia Eagles. What they have on the trenches, offensive line, defensive line, secondary worries me a little bit. A.J. Brown is playing phenomenal. Although I think if you're the offensive coordinator for the Eagles, you still want to be run heavy at least a little bit just because that's kind of what the identity of this team and a large portion of it was last year and what made them Super Bowl contenders. Love that A.J. Brown is absolutely balling out. I just hope that this team doesn't become one-dimensional and rely on A.J. Brown so much. I hope that this team understands we do have Devontae Smith. We do have a lethal running attack. We do have a fantastic offensive line. Dallas Goedert is no slouch at tight end. A really underrated tight end, if you ask me. Obviously, yeah, A.J. Brown, that's our guy. He's our best player. But let's understand that we're a little bit more than that. For the secondary, those guys are just going to have to hold up. They're relying on a lot of young guys, too. You did trade for Kevin Byard, nice safety. We'll see how he progresses into this week, which will be his second week with the team. Huge test against Dallas. Early game prediction. I'm going to go with Dallas in this game. I think right now they're catching a lot of steam. They're really in stride. But the one key matchup, and this is a key matchup in just about every Dallas game. If you can contain Micah Parsons, Lane Johnson's going to be tasked with that. Everyone else is going to be tasked with that on the offensive line, just because Parsons runs from. He rushes from just about everywhere, interior, outside, edge, doesn't matter. He still gets pressures. They use him in a unique way. Hurts' knee is going to be, there's questions about the health of his knee. That's going to be a big factor because when teams, especially teams who have a mobile quarterback, when they run at Micah Parsons, when they do that option to Parsons, they really have a lot of success. If you can run at him, keep him off balance, because you got to remember, with defenses who are really fast and play off of instincts like the Dallas Cowboys and especially Micah Parsons do, you have to keep them on edge. So if he's kept guessing, he's a lot slower, and you have an advantage in the play. If they can do that, I think the Philadelphia Eagles win this game. Going to have to contain CeeDee Lamb. Last year when they matched up against CeeDee Lamb, and it was in Dallas, he had a day, and they put him all over the formation. So it's not just going to be Darius Slay or James Bradbury. It's going to be Kevin Byard, Eli Ricks, Blankenship, whoever they have in that secondary on the field. CeeDee Lamb is going to attack them. Dak Prescott loves going to the tight end down the seam. So you have to keep an eye out for that. Their rushing attack hasn't been the same as last year. So that if you're the Philadelphia Eagles, that gives you a little bit of breathing room, knowing that we'll just have our guys. We'll just rush for, but we have to be solid and sound in the secondary. It'll be a fun matchup, but I'm going to go with Dallas in this one. Obviously, there's going to be a split in this matchup rivalry. One team's going to get one win, the other team's going to get another win. But it's a huge factor and a huge pendulum swing for whoever team wins in a stronghold in the division, and most possibly first in the NFC. So now going into college football, I mean, if you were to ask me who is the best team in college football, I think right now the committee got it on point. It's Ohio State. They have the resume, but when you look at the eye test and what they have, at least on paper, you still have massive issues if you're Ohio State. On offensive line and tackles, you're getting a new quarterback. You're having to replace 3 new offensive linemen because you sent 3 to the draft. 2 that you're going to have to replace on that offensive line are tackles. You've had problems with the tackle position. So you're going to have to keep the plays, the length of the plays, the downfield passing attack is going to be shortened just a bit. Have to protect the quarterback, maybe use more 12 personnel, although that's really not what the Ohio State Buckeyes do because they have all these wide receivers, but just find different ways. Their running back, Mayan Williams, he's going to be out for the remainder of the season. That's obviously a huge blow for them. Can Emeka Egbuka get back to being healthy? Lots of questions still that the Buckeyes have to sort out. But resume, they have it. You beat 2 top 10 teams. One you beat on the road in a tough environment. The other you beat at home. You control a majority of that football game. I think resume, you give it to them. Eye test, I got to go with either Georgia or Michigan. I'm going to give the slight edge to Michigan. I know there's a lot of things going on within that program, but what they have on paper, how they've looked, I know and I understand. They haven't played anybody. The schedule gets harder now. You got to face Penn State, you got to face Ohio State all later in the year. But Michigan, how they've looked, they haven't played anybody, but they've also taken care of business. They're at least putting up 30 points with their offense. J.J. McCarthy is looking solid. Michigan, the eye test, Michigan. Resume, Ohio State. Now, the College Football Playoff Committee, they released their initial rankings. They had number 1, Ohio State, number 2, Georgia, number 3, they had going to Michigan, and then number 4, they had to Florida State. What did we learn from the College Football Playoff Committee's initial rankings? I think what we learned is that they really do value the Pac-12. You have Washington in there at 5, you have Oregon in there at 6, and then you have a couple other Pac-12 teams like UCLA, Utah, USC, even though we all know USC lost 2 games they really shouldn't have and have underperformed from some expectations and last year. But the committee, they like the Pac-12. That's what we learned. In previous years, maybe it's because the Pac-12 wasn't really making that much noise, or it was not as good as it's been. But they obviously like it. Winner of the Pac-12 championship, obviously getting a bid into the College Football Playoff. For Florida State, what's their route to the College Football Playoff? Well, for Florida State, the only thing that's going to keep Florida State out of the College Football Playoff is going to be Florida State. Looking at the rest of their schedule, should be pretty easy for them. Going to have the ACC championship, of course. But, like I said, only thing that hinders Florida State is Florida State and overlooking opponents. Georgia, you just got to win out. But you do have a tough matchup, a really underrated matchup that could be on upset alert with Missouri this week. Missouri, they're an offense that we know can put up a ton of points. And if you look back to last year, this is a Missouri team that gave Georgia a dogfight. Really, one of the only dogfights that Georgia had all last year in the regular season was against Missouri. It was a really close game. So maybe Missouri's watched film and they know something we don't about Georgia that they can attack. That's going to be an interesting matchup. For Ohio State, they just have to win out. You beat Michigan. You get an easy opponent in the Big Ten Championship from the West Division. That's your route. Florida State, Georgia, Michigan, of course, they're going to have to beat Ohio State. Then you get, same thing for Ohio State. Beat that rivalry. then get an easy opponent in the Big Ten championship. But they're also going to have to face Penn State. Has Penn State gotten better than the last time they played Ohio State? Drew Aller, we know that was his first huge environment game, huge opportunity, big stage game. Didn't perform very well. Has he learned something different from that? It'll be interesting to see. And then I said earlier in the year and before the college football season started that there's always one team that holds the ticket, that they're probably on the outside looking in for the college football playoff, but they hold the ticket for other teams to get in. This year, I thought it was going to be Notre Dame, and last year it was LSU because LSU, they beat Alabama. Now they're facing Georgia in the SEC championship, but then they also faced Florida State. So you had all of that going on. I thought it was going to be Notre Dame this year because they played Ohio State, they played USC. Many expected, including myself, USC to be in the college football playoff or at least competing for it. They haven't. Things have shifted now. If you ask me, it's going to be LSU. They played Florida State earlier in the season. Probably going to have to face Georgia if they get to the SEC championship game. But before you get to the SEC championship game, you have to face Alabama. Just a lot of interesting things. With the college football playoff committee, we never know. Initially, they have it as resume is what they look for, but then that could change to eye test, and it could flip-flop week to week. That's just what makes it so entertaining and bizarre, and it gives people like me and sports media members the ability to critique the rankings. So let me know what y'all think in the comment section. Who is the best team in college football? Who is the best team in the NFL? If I were to ask you, let me know in the comment section. I appreciate your support and participation in this podcast. So for the NBA, James Harden, he gets traded. I like this trade for the Philadelphia 76ers, and here's why. The Philadelphia 76ers, you knew with Joel Embiid and James Harden, both of them, they see their number one options, or both of them want to be number one options. So how was that really going to work? It had its moments. James Harden, he's asked for a trade, gets it. Nick Nurse is the coach over there for the Philadelphia 76ers. In his time in Toronto, he's had really good defenses. Role players just absolutely role play. They buy in. So with this trade, you get a couple of guys that can fulfill the role that Nick Nurse wants them to. I like it for Philadelphia because you get that. Now Tyrese Maxey, he gets an expanded role. So you get to see the potential of Maxey. Maybe he fits into that Harden role. Obviously, the engine for this team is Joel Embiid. Everything is going to run through Joel Embiid. Then you have the role players filling in. Tyrese Maxey gets more reps, gets more of an opportunity. I like this for them. For the LA Clippers, this is a tough Western Conference. You have boatloads of team making their case for the Western Conference. I don't know how much this moves the needle. I mean, you have PG and Kawhi there. They're obviously the number one option. Sometimes they flip-flop from 1-2, depending on who's really getting hot. For this to work, I think James Harden's going to have to take on that role that he did with the Brooklyn Nets. Now, with the Nets, they had Kyrie Irving. Similar situation. You had Kyrie Irving. Then you had Kevin Durant. Both number one options. But James Harden, he was that facilitator role, played really good. Some were even saying he's an MVP caliber player because he had a really good stretch. I mean, he was getting a triple-double. He was facilitating. He was efficient on offense. His efficiency in scoring was going up. That's the role he's going to have to fulfill for this team. You know Russell Westbrook, he's going to be that hustle player, plays defense. Kawhi, I mean, they've got injuries, and Kawhi's getting older, so his defense isn't really what it was, but you still know he's a good defender. PG is going to be that scoring wing. James is going to have to fulfill that facilitating role. I don't know if this moves the needle and puts the Clippers at the top just because the West is so tough, but I think if he can do that, it'll be a good enough fit. And who knows? I mean, these trades all happen. We all suspect some teams to be on top, but sometimes it's just what type of seeding you have, the situation you're in, and how it falls to you. So now for my NFL Sunday game picks. Starting off, you're going to have the Miami Dolphins, Kansas City Chiefs. Kansas City Chiefs defense has been playing really well, but offensively, they've kind of struggled. who else outside of Patrick Mahomes do they have? You got to realize in the 2 games that they lost, it was all on the receivers. I mean, Sky Moore drops that crucial touchdown. Felt like the game was over, but if you look at the score, really wasn't. You get that touchdown. Now it's an 8-point game with the opportunity to get a 2-point conversion. Miami Dolphins, a lot of them give them hate because they haven't played up to par when they face similar talented teams. In this scenario, I mean, they're getting Jalen Ramsey back. Have defenses already found out how to stop Travis Kelce because he's had kind of a down year. I realize, yes, I understand he has missed a game, has had a down year. So have defenses found him out? Who knows what's going on? Still, a lot of questions for the Chiefs, not as many for the Dolphins. I got to give the Miami Dolphins the edge in this game. And then looking forward, you have the Vikings and the Falcons. I mean, a really toss-up game. I mean, it could be a coin flip. You look at what the Minnesota Vikings, they lose Kirk Cousins. And I want to say with Kirk Cousins, we're praying for you, Kirk. I mean, just brutal to go down with an Achilles injury. And then when watching the Netflix QB documentary, you just saw how much he invested into the game, how much time he put into it, taking levels upon levels to make sure that he's being the best quarterback for this football team. So to see him put that type of commitment in, to have that type of injury with this team, they're on a good track. I mean, they could have pulled off a last year's Lions type of run with Kirk Cousins healthy, and then Justin Jefferson was going to get healthy at some point in time. Addison was getting going too. Offense and defensive line were playing fantastic. Defense was really stepping up. That Brian Flores unit is really meshing together. Tough. Falcons starting Taylor Heineke. I mean, who knows how that's going to pan out. And then Arthur Smith is the biggest mystery puzzle in the history of the NFL, maybe even the universe. I'm going to go with the Vikings here. I mean, I know they're starting a backup quarterback, and they traded for Josh Dobbs. Dobbs won't be starting this week, but I got to go with the Minnesota Vikings. Bears Saints feels like a trap game for the Saints. Bears are starting Tyson Bagent again. Saints have a really good defense. Bears have a terrible offensive line. Defensive line, they've improved it this week. Added Montez Sweat, center second-round pick, which is going to be a high second-round pick to the Washington Commanders. Commanders get that. I'll talk about the Commanders later, but this game, I'm going to roll with the Saints. I think their defense and defensive line takes over. Rams, Packers. Packers are just a mess everywhere. Defense used to be their strong unit. Now it's not. Offensively, their organization hasn't put or invested much into the wide receivers because they just seemingly let the Hall of Fame quarterback deal with it. Now you don't have a Hall of Fame quarterback. Actually, a quarterback with more questions than what's known. Really tough. I'm going to go with the Rams. I mean, they got beat really bad by Dallas. You figure this is their bounce-back game. Commanders, Patriots. Commanders lost their 2 best edge rushers. Patriots have been playing really good. Unfortunate that they lose Kendrick Bourne because he's been playing really well. Patriots offense probably starting to gel a little bit better. I'm going to go with the Patriots here. Seahawks, Ravens. The early game. One you have to watch out for. Got the potential to be a really good football game. Tons of offensive firepower for the Seahawks. Their offensive line has struggled. Ravens defense really good, especially in the secondary and at the safety spot. Roquan Smith in there. Seahawks, you figure, might use a lot more 12 personnel. Maybe they start to get Jackson Smith and Jigba, the rookie, going. Maybe he's found his footing finally after having that wrist injury and then after the post-bye. Still, the Baltimore Ravens, I like where they're headed. It was a close game, a thrilling win for the Seahawks. Usually when that happens to teams the following week, they lay a dud. I'm not going to say they're not going to have any points, but I'm going to give it to the Ravens. Texans, Buccaneers, 2 teams you really shouldn't overlook just because they're really good. They play really tough football. CJ Stroud had a bad game last week. Buccaneers coming off a mini bye. I'm going to go with the Texans. I think their offense finds their tracks once again. Expect a huge game from Tank Dell. Cardinals, Browns. This one's also another toss-up. 2 teams. I mean, Is Deshaun Watson going to start? Is he not going to start? PJ Walker has done a decent job. I mean, he's done just enough. It's not anything fantastic or to rave about. Cardinals, I don't know what direction they're going in. I'm just going to say the Browns in that one. Colts, Panthers. Panthers, they came off a bye, had an impressive win. Although both teams and both offenses really didn't get anything going, it was a really low-scoring game. Colts, Shane Steichen, having that unit perform really well. They draft really well. Their cornerback, Juju Brent's playing well. Josh Downs, another one of their second-round picks, performing really well once again. Give me the Colts in that one. I like the Colts, how they've been playing so far. Giants, Raiders. Raiders are a complete mess. Jimmy G's not going to be starting. How about the birthday present he had? He's getting paid $24 million, and then they find out that he's going to be benched for his birthday. I think he had it either yesterday or the first. Nonetheless, Giants with Tyrod Taylor have been playing really good, coming off a tough loss. Give me the Giants in that one. Told you about Cowboys, Eagles. The Sunday night game, Bills, Bengals. The Bills got to know in that locker room what happened, what went down last year, how they lost in that playoff game. So you figure this unit, which the trenches I've been stressing about, is going to play a lot better. But the Bengals, they're having their typical Bengals run where late October, early November, they finally start to catch stride, and they're one of those teams that you have to look out for going into the wild card. I'm going to take the Bengals in that one. I think T. Higgins starts to get going really slowly, and this offense and Joe Burrow finally catches their footing. Chargers, Jets, another coin flip. I'm going to go with the Jets in this one. Their defense, always going to keep them in games. They're also a team, I hate to sound redundant, but they're a team that's a coin flip. It doesn't matter if they're playing the best team in the league or whatnot. Their defense is going to keep them in the game. Zach Wilson will not have the worst game, but then somehow we'll find a way to just have this team in field goal range. And I'm going to go with the Jets in that game. So those are my Sunday Week 9 game picks. Let me know what you think, what I should change, what you would change differently. Now I'll be moving into college football. I'm going to have Alabama, LSU. This is a historic, storied matchup. When these two teams get together, it's always memorable. Remember in 2019, the LSU, they hadn't won a game against Alabama in this rivalry for quite some time. But then Joe Burrow and that fantastic 2019 squad pull off a thrilling barn burner shootout win. Great. And then last year, LSU, they lose 2 games really early in the season. And then they finally start to catch their stride, which sounded very similar to this LSU team this year. Alabama, they've lost the game earlier in the season. You see the similarities between last year's matchup and this year's matchup. The key factor to this game is going to be who can throw the ball more efficiently and better. If Jalen Milroe and that Alabama passing attack gets going early, you got to watch out because the Bama defense plays off of instincts and they're very fast. So for LSU, Jayden Daniels has been playing fantastic so far. So they're going to have to find ways to get the ball out quickly. Bubble screens and that sort of deal, short extensions of the run aren't going to work because this is such a fast defense. You have to keep them on their heels. You have to run the ball efficiently, which they did last year. They were getting sustained runs of anywhere from 5 to 6 yards sometimes. A lot of huge chunk runs too. If they can do that, replicate what they did last year, I like where they're going. Got to put pressure on Milroe. Got to get him flustered early. You remember, early in the season, it was his first big-time game. Didn't perform very well. What has he learned from that? What can he take away from that to be even better this time in another huge atmosphere game? It's going to be in Tuscaloosa, very much like the Texas game. What has he learned? Can the intermediate and short game work for him? Because we know the deep ball works. Can they run? And then Jace McClellan, the Alabama running back, last thing I want to say, does a very good job with his vision and patience. What running backs are taught is you want to go, say it's a power run up the A-gap, which is between the center and the guard. You want to go squeeze, and then if it's not there, those corners are going to be squeezing in because they think, oh, it's an inside run. I have to help inside. They've already spilled the edge. Then the running back, which what Matek is going to get going. We know the receivers that they have. Malik Neighbors is playing really well. A fun classic game, but I'm gonna give that edge to Alabama just because Nick Saban is gonna want to get revenge from last year. Milroe is gonna want to get revenge and show that in the big time moments he can step up. I got Alabama. And as for right now, that really concludes this podcast. I want to thank every single one of y'all listening to this podcast who enjoy it. I appreciate you. Like this video, subscribe, follow me on social media. The links will be in the description. You can have the links to my TikTok, Spotify, YouTube channel, Twitter, X, all of that in the description. Make sure you check that out. I appreciate y'all. Y'all have a fantastic day. Watch tons of sports. Just watch the games. They're going to be exciting. Of course, they always are every week. Tell me what you think of this podcast or of the games, the matchups in the comments. I appreciate your support. It really means a lot to me. Y'all mean a lot to me. Take care. Have a fantastic day. God bless. And until next time, deuces.